Wall to wall. In April 2021, No Wusung purchases an 84 square meters, 900 square feet apartment in Seoul for 1.1 billion won. He begins a happy life there with his fiancée, but by August 2024, the apartment's value crashes to the 800 million range. The financial strain leads to a broken engagement, and Woo-sung, burdened with over 700 million won in loans, juggles a day job and night delivery work to survive. One night after returning from a delivery, Woo-sung hears a mysterious alarm and wakes up at 4:30 a.m. He sees a neighbor from Unit 1301, Ju Kyung, leaving a note about noise complaints on his door. Despite his denial, she acts strangely, intrudes into his apartment, and warns him cryptically. He decided to confront the tenant upstairs, but to his surprise, the man Jin Ho had been asleep, and there was no way he could have been making noises. The resident's representative lived in the penthouse on the top floor. Yunhua didn't care about the sound issue. She simply decided to silence Woo-sung. She handed him an envelope full of cash and told him not to discuss the noise problem with anyone outside. The value of the property would fall crashing down if the media found out about it. And since Woo-sung was also a homeowner, she expected him to understand the complexity of the situation. Woo-sung didn't expect a reward for his troubles, and he happily agreed to comply. He took leave from his office to spend a week at home, his eyes fixed to his screen, closely monitoring his crypto investment. The neighbors complained that from the time Woo-sung was at home, the noise only got worse. They gathered in front of Woo-sung's apartment, ready to confront him. Woo-sung blamed the downstairs tenants for the noise, and he demanded to check their apartment as well. Yunhua tried to control the commotion, and she suggested they check Woo-sung's apartment first, and then the apartment of the tenants downstairs. Woo-sung confidently allowed the maintenance man and the upstairs tenant, Jin Ho, to check his place. To his surprise, Jin Ho discovered a second cell phone in his house that was continuously playing loud construction noises. The neighbor intentionally banged his head and fell to the ground. He was hospitalized, and Woo-sung was arrested. According to the tip that his colleague had shared, he had to sell his share on Liberation Day for maximum profit. But he was handcuffed and his phone was broken. Woo-sung was desperate. He knew it was now or never. So he lied about going to the washroom and instead rushed to the officer's cabin and locked the door. He got hold of a computer and was about to sell his share when he realized that if he waited a little longer, he would profit even more. His greed resulted in his downfall. The cops tased him, and he failed to sell his share at the right time. The next time he checked, his share was at a loss. He was about to give up when Jin Ho showed up at his apartment. He was sure that Woo-sung was making the noises, but after entering his apartment, he realized he was not at fault. Jin Ho promised that he would help Woo-sung to reach the bottom of the truth, but he suggested Woo-sung rest a little. When Woo-sung returned to his apartment, he checked the second phone that was found in his storeroom, and he suddenly noticed that the Wi-Fi was turned on and connected to a nearby router. To his surprise, the Wi-Fi had maximum signal outside Jin Ho's apartment. Woo-sung figured that the man who was pretending to help him was possibly the one who tried to frame him. He decided to gather evidence against Jin Ho before blaming him. Jin Ho broke into Jin Ho's apartment, and he was shocked when he saw the massive project his seemingly innocent neighbor was working on. Not only was Woo-sung's phone connected to Jin Ho's Wi-Fi, but he had been surveilling everyone living in the building. He also had an entire room full of photographs and written details about each of the tenants in the building. Jin Ho had been keeping a close watch on Woo-sung. He had also been listening to him through the intercom. He was the one who'd set the second phone in his storeroom with a loud noise, and as it turned out, he'd paid the tenants downstairs to irritate and push Woo-sung to the edge. Jin Ho soon returned to his apartment, and Woo-sung had no choice but to hide in the cupboard. Jinho went to take a quick nap, and while Wu Xiong considered battering him to death, he couldn't do it. He instead decided to leave the apartment after collecting evidence. But suddenly he heard the doorbell ring, and he ended up hiding under the bed. The downstairs tenant met Jin Ho. She was in a terrible mood. She blamed Jin Ho for her husband's critical condition after he banged his head to put the blame on Wu Xiong and keep him in custody. As it turned out, Jin Ho had paid the couple to execute his plan and make Wu Xiong suffer. He had sneaked into Wu Xiong's apartment, and he knew about his crypto investment and his plan of selling it on Liberation Day. He offered the wife more money in exchange for her silence. But when she continued to protest and attempted to destroy his hard drives full of video footage, Jin Ho ended up bashing her head with a hammer. After witnessing the incident, Wu Xiong waited for the right moment to leave. But as it turned out, Jin Ho had a hunch that there was someone else in his apartment. He confronted Wu Xiong and was about to kill him. Wu Xiong begged him to let him go, and he promised to help him solve the mystery behind the noise problem. He too was desperate to get his apartment back. Since Jin Ho had already killed a tenant, Wu Xiong suggested he would have a tough time explaining how he ended up with 2 dead bodies at his apartment, coupled with the fact that he had an elaborate surveillance setup in 2 rooms. Wu Xiong urged him to think wisely. He could execute his plan well if there was someone else to help him. Jin Ho and Wu Xiong arrived at Yunhua's penthouse for answers. Jin Ho already had access to every apartment, so they managed to easily break in. They approached Yunhua and her husband. They tied them up, and Jin Ho asked them about the ledger. She denied knowing about the ledger, but John Hai added that he'd overheard her conversation with her husband through the intercom when she'd mentioned it. Yunhua responded that her husband might have kept it behind the steel door. Jin Ho dragged her husband to the other room and used his finger impression to open the steel door, while Wu Xiong was asked to keep an eye on Yunhua. As soon as John Hai left, Yunhua begged Wu Xiong to free her, and he agreed to do it because he couldn't care less about Jin Ho's expose, and he was not ready to watch Jin Ho kill more people. Yunhua promised to give his apartment back for his help, but soon Jin Ho screamed from next door, and Wu Xiong walked up to him and found out that behind the steel door, Yunhua and her husband stored all their dirty cash. By then, Wu Xiong had already grabbed the gun he'd noticed in the study room, and he was about to shoot Jin Ho with it when he realized it was not working. Jin Ho kicked and punched Wu Xiong, and to their surprise, Yunhua sprayed a substance in the air and locked herself behind the steel door. She'd asked her husband to kill Jin Ho, but he remained unsuccessful. Yunhua stood behind Wu Xiong with a golf stick in her hand. Yunhua assaulted Wu Xiong with the golf stick. She never cared about him. He was simply an easy person she could manipulate, and she boastfully stated that she had been hiding the ledger in plain sight all along. It was kept hidden between the pages of a magazine. She didn't feel guilty for what she did because she strongly believed that cheaper flats were the only way forward. After all, people such as Wu Xiong would have never dreamt of buying a house in the city had it not been something within his reach. When she was about to kill Wu Xiong with a golf stick, because he knew too much, she was petrified to hear a voice from behind. Jin Ho didn't die. He had been holding his breath, waiting for the right moment to strike. He repeatedly stabbed her, resulting in her death. Ho's condition was also fragile, but he was determined to expose the ledger to the world. He asked Wu Xiong to hand it to him, but instead he stuffed the ledger and the contracts in the oven and turned it on. He wanted to watch Jin Ho suffer. Jin Ho had destroyed the life of an innocent man just to be a hero, and in his own twisted way, he thought the truth made everything worth it. Wu Xiong decided to do what he felt was right. He ultimately chose to burn down the penthouse with the 3 bodies in it. He managed to make it out of the building, and when he regained consciousness, he found himself on a hospital bed. He was later questioned by the prosecutor, And while they had found Jin Ho's videos and learned about the ledger, they couldn't believe that it had simply disappeared. Wuxiang didn't say a word. He possibly had stated before that he had no idea what had unfolded at the penthouse because there was no evidence to suggest that he was there. Wuxiang returned to his empty apartment in the final scene of Wall to Wall. It was still very noisy and disturbing due to construction fault, but he felt a sense of achievement, knowing that the apartment now belonged to him.